Here we go. Have the record button. So let's see who we have. We have Sarah. Sarah, how was your trip?
It was amazing. Very stressful, but it's always worth it to see a kid that's never seen the ocean.
That is amazing, isn't it? I remember when I went with the fourth graders, to see kids who have read about it, talked about it, but never seen it is pretty awesome. It definitely is. And let's see, who else do we have here? Jesse, are you there?
Love you.
Hey, Jesse. Oh, you saying goodbye?
Hi, you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
How are you?
Fine. I was finalizing dinner here for the whole crew here.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Good for you. My husband cooks on Tuesdays, so I love that.
This is kind of my hobby. I enjoy it.
All right, so we're just going to jump right in. We're going to talk about artifacts first, and then rather than go through the reading, other than if you have any specific questions, I want to share some personal experience about budgets because I have some good ones. And this is I tell you that every time. This is the most important, but this is one of the most important areas. This is definitely one of the areas. This and exceptional children are the two areas that will put you on the front page of the news in a bad kind of way. So you want to really pay attention to these two. So let's start by looking at our dates. I am happy to report that everybody has done the SIP 1 and 2. And you're ready to start on 3 and 4. So I'm going to kind of go over those, but really, you've already done 1 and 2. That's the hard part. 3 and 4 is the breeze from here. And so I want to run over a few dates, though, because there seems to be, let's just say that the dates that you have in Blackboard are very lenient, and I just want to warn you that those are absolutes, so I would be careful about those. So your final SIP 1, 2, 3, and 4 has to be into task string between April 23rd and the 29th. But the 29th is the absolute latest. So if Dr. Whitaker tells you you need to make some revisions, that doesn't really give you any turnaround time. So I recommend that you move it closer to the 23rd than the 29th. Any questions about that? All right, and then after you do that, you have to do the CAP 1. And I'm not going to go over that tonight, but I'm just going to tell you that we had a meeting last night, a coaches meeting, and Dr. Lamb said that if you do not have the CAP 1 finished by the time summer school starts or the summer session starts, there's no way that you'll finish all that you have to do in the summer session, because that is a 10-week session with no time off. And let's see, let me look and see if I can tell you. He sent me the date today. Does anybody know what it is off the top of your head? May 21st. Summer school is the summer session is May 21st to July 30th, and that's a 10-week session. Okay, so if you can hang on 1 second, I got a couple of people that need me to resend the link. Thank you for your patience. Let's see. Okay. All right, wait on just a minute. I just got another message. Evidently, the group that's with Dr. Whitaker's group didn't get the link for tonight.
We did get that link, Dr. Z. You sent it in a separate email.
Do what?
We did get that link. You had sent it in a separate email.
Okay, so, but you're in my group, Sarah. Is that Sarah talking? Who's talking?
Yeah, sorry, I lied.
No, that's all right. Sarah's in my group, so my group got it. What a mess. We'll get this better, but we'll get better at this by next session. Okay, let's try that. So that was there's a couple of people. That was Sarah, Lori and Katie. All right, sorry. I'm back. All right, so, hi, Jonathan. So any question about the dates, the due dates?
Dr. Z, this is Melanie. I'm joining you guys from Mexico.
From where?
From Mexico. So if my connection is pretty good, but this is my spring break week and I'm in Mexico, but I am joining the class via.
Well, I would have gone with you and given you personal attention.
You are perfectly welcome to come anytime.
I had 8 grandchildren on my spring break, so I'm ready for a break from a break.
I understand.
All right. So anyway, we're going to go over the SIP 3 and 4 in a few minutes. But Dr. Whitaker asked me to also go over your internship log. Remind you that that you have 80 hours that you are to document on your internship log. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mute everybody. So if you want to speak, just unmute yourself, okay? So your internship log has to be 80 hours. It needs to be varied, and you need to tie that to your competencies. So she wants to be sure you're working on that. And as soon as you get your 80 hours, get it signed by your site supervisor, upload it, and let Dr. Whitaker review it. Then the next thing is the competency folio. She was real concerned when she went in today that nobody has started uploading their competencies to their competency folio. So when you did the OMA 4 or 5, whatever it was, the last one, and that was reviewed, you should have turned around, copied, and pasted those into your competency folio and uploaded your evidence. By holding all this to the last minute, you're dumping all of that on her to evaluate and turn it back around in time before TestStream shuts down. And so you're going to have to start submitting some of that. So she wants you to get the OMA, go ahead and get that in your folio as you start working on the next section as well. All right, let me go back and see if hang on a minute, we're still having trouble. Man. Do any of you have Loretta Whitaker's or Lori Cooper's email? All right, I'm gonna have to minimize you for just a minute. I'll be right back. I'm back. Okay. Hopefully that'll be our last one. All right, so let's look at the step 3 and 4. Have any of you had a chance to look at it? Do you have any questions? I'm gonna turn on some more light.
Dr. Z,
Yes,
this is JP.
yes.
I'm kind of confused about how do we start skip 3? Is it a continuation of skip 2? And then is skip 4 just a simple reflection or something?
Okay, here we go. So SIP 3
Hey, buddy.
is a combination.
I'm in class right now. What's up, buddy?
SIP 3 is a combination of 1 and 2 put together in a marketing plan. So what it is, on your instructions is that you are going to do a statement of purpose and that you're going to talk about your current school program. These are your headings right here at the bottom in the green box. Those are going to be your headings. The information that you're taking comes right from above this in 1 and 2. And you're just going to combine all that together for 3. And then you're going to do a timeline for it, a timeline for implementation, a feedback component, evaluation and reflection. That's all of 3 together. So don't look to make it hard because the information is already there. You're just putting it together in what we're calling a marketing plan. And to do that, you're going to use those bullets in the green box with the prompt. A statement of the purpose of the plan, the strengths of the current school program, and how it can enhance the image of the school within this community. So kind of that goes along with your purpose. And then opportunities for input from the community related to the decision-making process. So how did you get input? You know, what was the system that you went through to get your information? And who was involved in it? And then what are some of the activities that you're going to do? And then put it together in a timeline and have a component for feedback, evaluation, and reflection on that. Does that help any? That's just 3.
Yes, it does. It helps a lot. So a lot of the information is coming out of skip 1 and 2.
All of it, yep.
All right, and then basically developing a marketing plan with a timeline. Who was involved in helping me do this, and what is the process for getting community involvement? Is that generally?
That's generally what it is. When you look at the actual rubric under 3, the way the rubric states it is, it says the plan sufficiently and consistently details all of the following. And then it has a bulleted list for you right there. If you use those bullets as your headings, gather the information under the headings from 1 and 2, you should be in good shape. Everybody kind of look at that and see if you have any questions. So let me go over that again. Skip 3 is not new information. It is a culmination of skip 1 and 2 put together in what they're calling a marketing plan. Sometimes I think when they name things like that, we all freak out and think it's supposed to be some big, massive something that you're creating all over. It's not. You're just basically taking the information from skip 1 and skip 2 and putting them together in a plan. It's going to be very precise by using the bullets that are on the rubric. And when I say rubric, I mean this one in your book. Under proficient, it says the marketing plan consistently and logically supports the findings established in the following: the needs assessment results, the organizational analysis results, and the resource identification. Those are 3 things you've already done. So you are now going to put those together under the headings that come below that, which it says a statement of purpose, description of the current program, opportunities for input, opportunities for involvement, timeline for implementation, feedback component for evaluation and reflection. Out of anything you've done, this should be your easiest. I tell you that every time, but I mean it this time. So any questions on SIP 3? And then you've all got I've got you all muted. So if you want to speak, you are welcome to speak. Just unmute yourself. Okay. Now I'm going on to 4. On 4, you're going to address 12 competencies, and they should be listed. They're not listed on the rubric, but they're listed back in the beginning where, let's see where it describes SIP 4, and this is in the scale handbook. It says you must submit a minimum of 12 evidences. So that's this. You're going to do basically 1 for each of your competencies. Anywhere it has the UMA or the SIP in the title, you're going to be uploading those to your competency folio. So for this one, for the SIP, for the 12 you do here, is going to be the 12 that have the SIP under the heading, which Dr. Whitaker has probably sent you a list of those, but I can send that tomorrow, if you, just in case you don't have that. You should have it already. But it's listed in several different places, so sometimes it's confusing.
If you would send that, that would be beautiful.
I'm making myself a note to send it to you. But here's the thing. When you do your competency reflection, for example, if you're talking about communication, then your paragraph should address the way that you've grown in your ability to communicate through the creation of the SIP artifact. So I've had some that have just kind of rambled about, I'm growing in communication because now I'm able to use this or do that, and I've learned this and I've learned that. But keep it focused on what you learned and how you grew through your communication skills during this artifact development. Does that make sense? Okay. So that would be 4. And once Dr. Whitaker approves that, get that uploaded to your competency folio. Now, the other The other thing about this competency folio is you have to have evidence uploaded to that also. So for example, if you're in communication for the SIP, if you refer to an email that you sent out, then you need to have a copy of that email. If you refer to a letter that you sent out to parents or something that you posted on a Facebook page, you need to have a screenshot of that. You need to have evidence to support what you're talking about in your narrative. Okay? And welcome to those of you who had to join us late. I'm not sure what happened. Dr. Whitaker was going to send out that link, so I apologize. I apologize for that. We have just gone over the SIP. We've talked about 3 is a culmination of 1 and 2 put together in a specific plan. The headings for that plan are in the rubric as a bulleted list. And you're just going to fill that out. And then you're done with 3. And 4 is going to be your reflections, which will later be copied and pasted into your competency folio. Any questions about that? This is that uncomfortable pause. I'm just waiting for you to think, see if you have any questions. All right. Then I also went over the weekly schedule, and I just want you to be aware that you know, you're coming into the last 3 weeks. It's going to be very, very tight. You have to finish the SIP, and you have to do CAP, the first part of the CAP, by the end of this semester. Task Stream is going to be shut down April the 29th. So anything that you have needs to get to your coach, be reviewed, and back to Task Stream, revised if you need to revise it, and into Task Stream by the 29th. After that, you won't be able to upload anything. And then your final grades, we have to have them in by the 10th. So if you have any discussion boards missing, or most of you have done really well with that, but I think a couple of you have had problems maybe putting things in the wrong place that I'll address with you individually. But basically anything that you need to upload for a grade in your course has to be to us. We have to get it graded and get it in the system no later than the 10th. Okay, so if you have any questions about your artifacts, your artifact development, your internship log, your competency folio, now's the time to ask them. Because I'm about to go on to budget. I'm going to save you from getting fired of that first job.
Dr. Z,
Yes.
I may have a couple questions about uploading the artifacts.
Yes.
And so if not right now, but as I proceed in that direction, if I have a question, can I just either call you or send you an email?
Of course, definitely. The easiest thing to do is send me a text.
Okay.
And by that text, I will tell you, depending on where I am, to either call me or I'll call you when I get to a place where I can. That's the best way to do it, the fastest.
Okay, will do.
You're welcome to send an email or any way that's good for you.
Okay, thank you.
If it's midnight, email's good.
It won't be that late.
Okay. Anybody else? Kendra?
I have a question, Dr. Z. For our evidences for our internship, if
Yes.
we already had one, could we get like our director to write an email saying that we did this task this day for this time, and would that count as an evidence? Because most of the time I just communicate with my director through a phone, and I forget to get email.
What are you talking about for your internship log?
No, for the
Competency folio.
yes, ma'am.
Now, your competency folio has to be actual documentation of
Right,
whatever it is you're talking
that's what I'm asking. So could I get him to write an email saying that I actually did this on this day? Because most of the time we just talk by phone.
No,
You
have to have minutes to upload. You have to have an agenda, or it depends on what probably the best thing for you to do is look at the specific ones that you're talking about and talk to Dr. Whitaker about it, because the evidence for the competencies wouldn't necessarily be things that you're growing through just through a conversation with your principal. They're either
about
that you
meetings. I'm talking about meetings. So like when we met to talk about the SIP Task 1 with the community, he just called me in his office and we sat down and had that. But I'm just saying, if I don't have an email stating that we did that, can he just write an email saying that we accomplished it?
Ask Dr. Whitaker, because my understanding is that you would have to do an agenda of that meeting. You can go back and do it by the date and the time, but evaluate. If you say that you grew through that competency, and it depends on what your competency is. If you're talking about communication, that's one thing. An email will be okay. If you're talking about change management, then they're going to want to see a document or some notes of some discussion that took place. So your best bet is to work with her on what she thinks will fly on that. She's going to look at it first before it goes to the evaluator. And just a heads up from here to you're almost at the end, but that's why I always have my interns save your documentation along the way. So like each competency, if you have a folder for that, to put it aside or something like that, it'll help you keep up with it, because you have to have evidence. I mean, this is for licensure. It's not just something we can fake and say, oh, it's not me you're answering to, it's the state for license. And so their documentation is probably, I mean, what they're requiring is more than he said I did this or she said I did that. They're going to want to know that you had a meeting, or that you led a meeting, or that you had an agenda or minutes from a meeting, you know. So, but you work with, your situation's a little different, so you work with Dr. Whitaker on that, okay? But go through first and find out which ones you're talking about, because that's what she'll have to know before she can answer that question. Anybody else? Questions about competencies, artifacts, competency folio, internship log? Okay, and I imagine Dr. Whitaker will have her meeting on Thursday too that she normally has. So let's just jump right into budgets. So it's really weird because I can't see you guys. It's driving me nuts. Anyway, let me move that. Okay, so I want to show you. Let's see. What I did with it. I was right over here. I want to show you part of my budgeting experience as a beginning principal. Okay, first of all, I left teaching after 10 years and worked for my dad in the family business. And one of the reasons I left that business was because I just couldn't stand business. So at the end of each month, when we had to reconcile the bank statements, I just felt like it ought to be okay just to say, add 10 cents to balance. but a business won't let you do that. They make you find the 10 cents. My personal checking account is kept in my head most of the time. So when I became a principal, and all of a sudden I knew that I was accountable to the state and to the federal government, and that I could get in really big trouble legally if I couldn't account for my money, it was a pretty scary thing for me. So I learned really quick, though, some tips. First of all, if you read chapter 10, you learned that what we use mostly is fund accounting, and that basically what you're dealing with is your current assets, your fixed assets, and your liabilities, and that is explained pretty well, I think, in the book, and they show you the formula for that. I think the biggest issue that you need to understand is your money comes from different places. You have money from the federal government, you have money from the state, you have local money that comes from your local school board. And then in some cases, like in mine, I also had county money. Now, the interesting thing about the county money is that our school was on the line of 2 different counties. It's a really sticky subject because when county commissioners give you money for your school, they want everybody out there to know that your school received money from them. So one of the things that we had to do in our system was, if the county that I was a sliver of their county. So if they gave me $25 per student, then I had to have documentation that that $25 went to each student. And I had to advertise that each student received $25 from that county. So, you know, when you're dealing with money, people are really strict about how they want credit for it, right? So local, city, county, however you're getting your money, that's a big deal to them. The federal money is the one that will most likely land you in jail, or certainly cost you your job, because the federal government is not very forgiving. And so if you spend their money incorrectly, they don't just allow you to pay it back, they penalize you. And so they will fine you thousands of dollars for the money that you spent incorrectly. Free and reduced lunch, I think, is a great place to talk about that. I don't know if any of you had the breakfast program years back, but there was a breakfast program, universal breakfast program, and every student got free breakfast. And one day, the auditor showed up and randomly went to different classrooms in different schools of a system. And a lot of teachers weren't real fond of the breakfast program, especially middle school and high school, because you had to keep track of who ate and what they ate and so forth. So when an auditor asked a teacher, how do you keep up with who gets milk for breakfast each day? And rather than having a system, the teacher answered, I'm too busy to keep up with that. I don't have any idea who eats breakfast and who doesn't. I just check it off the list. That is not the kind of answer you give the federal government. So that system was penalized, and I can't remember the amount, but it is an ungodly amount, because they were penalized for every day of that school year for every child in that school that was recorded as having eaten breakfast, because one teacher was being a smart aleck, just didn't want to deal with it, and gave a offhanded answer like that. So it's federal money is pretty strict. And they are very specific as to what you can and cannot spend it on. ESL money, you get a lot of money sometimes for that. But the problem with that is you get to buy all these great games and great resources. But up until a couple of years ago, unless they've changed it, those activities had to be in the hands of your identified students. Other students were not to benefit from those activities. They were strictly for your identified students. And it just goes on down the road. As an administrator, you learn to manage these funds, you learn to manage these resources, and you learn to make the most of it. But you have to be on your toes. You have to understand how the system works, and you have to pay attention. And you have to teach your staff. That's the other thing. You have to teach them. The other thing that's kind of interesting is when you're given money, I know you read about how money is encumbered. So money being encumbered is kind of like promised. So I'm going to get a purchase order to buy construction paper, but I'm not going to buy it for 2 months. But I've already encumbered that money. That means that the system set aside that money, and they're going to buy my construction paper with it on whatever date it is. So that money's promised. But you have to continually look at your accounts to see what money has been promised or encumbered, what money has actually been spent, and how much you still have. Because here's the thing. You have deadlines, different deadlines for different pots of money. And after that deadline, that money can no longer be spent. If it's state money, it goes back to the state. Superintendents really don't like it when they find that you didn't keep up with your money, and because of that, some of it got sent back to the state. And I know it sounds crazy and you think that it wouldn't happen to you, but it happens all the time. And it's a real slippery slope, because one of the things that I like to do was hang on to a big chunk of my money until middle of the year. And then in January, I was able to ask the staff before they left for Christmas to give me a wish list of what they'd like to have for second semester. Because I felt like by then they knew their students better, they knew what their needs were. But here's the thing. This one time, this system, the state actually took back money. So they'd already given it to the system. The system had already promised it to the schools. But mid-year, anybody who had money left, the system took it back to go towards what the state was taking back. So luckily, I kind of got wind by watching the political scene and figuring out what might happen. I spent my money really fast, so I didn't lose it. But these are the kinds of things that, along with all of these things that we talked about with EC, all of these parent concerns, all of this public relation that you're responsible for, all of this management of personnel and dealing with their contracts and everything, then you have this with budgeting. And it's something that you really, really, really have to keep your eye on. My first experience on the job, when I was hired, it was July 1. And I'd always heard about what little money you had at the school level. And I had what I thought was just a huge amount of money. But the real issue was I didn't know what came out of that money. So I was looking at it, going to Disney World in my head, thinking of all the things that we could buy. We could give everybody everything they ever wanted, because this was a lot of money. So before I spent any of it, though, I went to the central office, and I asked to talk to someone in finance. And I said, okay, I don't want to be the parent that buys the big screen TV, takes my kids to Disney World, and then realize I don't have anything left in my bank account. So can you help me understand how this money, how I need to budget this money? Well, it turns out that a lot of that money had to go towards my tutors, my reading tutors that I had. A lot of it was already promised towards some an after-school program that was going on. A lot of it went for some of the things like when you bring in somebody special, like from the Arts Council, things like that. So a lot of that money in that big pot was really already promised, but it hadn't been officially encumbered because I hadn't done the paperwork, because I didn't know it existed. So there's a lot involved with money, and it's nothing you can't handle. It's just you need to be aware going in that it's more complicated than it may first appear. The other thing you have to be aware of is that the federal government, not so often the state, but the federal government, and I know anybody that's worked with EC, you know this for sure. They're great about doing unfunded mandates. So they will require you to do something, give remediation, offer after-school tutoring, whatever it is. But they may not give you money to pay for it, but they're requiring you to do it. So those are all the complicated things that go along with budgeting that you may or may not be aware of. You also have grants, and grants are a big deal because you have to prove that every penny of that grant went specifically for what was written in that grant. You can't decide, oh, I'm going to buy this consumable textbook instead of that video, those videos that I was going to buy. You can't do that. Whatever was written in that grant, that's exactly what you have to spend it. Or you forfeit having to pay back the whole amount. So people are funny about their money. They're really sticky about their money. And you need to know that going in. I'm going to show you what I did. And believe me, this is not the best way. I am sure you know people who do this better, but I'm going to tell you my way because of this. I'm a real out-of-the-box kind of person. And if you give me a problem, like 4th grade is failing in math, I'm going to come up with a way to fix that problem. But it's not going to be doing the same thing we've always done. It's going to be something really unusual, really different. And it might require hiring extra people. It might require buying extra materials. It may require a trip. It's going to be something different. And so that's going to cost money. So it's not that you can't do that. You can, but you have to know what your limitations are. I remember one year I had this idea to save some money to offer a summer school for my kids who, what I found was I looked at their reading data and I realized that they were losing it was taking them a full month and a half, I can't remember specifically, to catch back up on their reading level when they went to homes where Spanish was the primary language. And so in the summer, so often they would go through the whole summer without speaking English. So first of all, I met with the moms and dads and went to the community and met with them and explained the importance of speaking English in the summer and the issue. And then I came up with this idea of offering a camp at school where the kids would at least be coming and speaking English. So the problem was that I needed to hire some people. And if you read this chapter, then you know that there are certain codes for paying salaries. That's a certain number. When you get into that chart of accounts, there's a certain number, like a 400 number or 200 number. Things are paid for out of one. Time, people are paid for out of another. And you have to have money in that chart of accounts. And so I had a really hard time figuring out where to get the money that was in the right account, but we figured it out, so it can be done. But we had to get pretty creative about it. And I think we had to use a substitute code for that. So anyway, I just tell you that because one of the most important things I did was about every 2 weeks, I sat down with my secretary and we looked at the checkbook and we looked at our budget and how we were spending on it. And I don't know if you can see this or not. I know you can't read it, but if you can just see how this is in this book. This is a hardback journal like this. And so what it says in here, money, March the 12th, 2007. School account, $2,473.75. And in parentheses, I have plus school pictures plus yearbooks. Then I have PDS, $5,000, parentheses, no timeline. And then I have a whole list of things that I am projecting that we were going to spend out of that. School improvement, $1,171. And then I have down the chart of accounts, AS 400 and what it is. Writing Academy. I was going to have a writing academy. So each couple of weeks, we sat down and went over each of these areas, like what we had left in 400, what we had left in 200, what we had left that could be used for remediation. So the categories were school improvement, remediation, PDS, school account, workshops, Title I, and so forth. And I always had it here together where I would just keep coming back to the same thing. And that's how we kept up with the money. And that's how we made the most of what we had. I think the biggest issue for me was that I was in a small school and they don't necessarily give you money to spend on your staff. So you notice some schools buy their staff like really nice jackets and give them meals or feed them a lot. And I was having trouble finding money for food, for snacks at a staff meeting. So again, we got kind of creative on how we came up with that money. But those are the things that if you know going in, it's a lot easier. You know, I went into the job July 1 thinking that all the things that I wanted to do that summer for the staff for this big opening to welcome them back, only to realize that the principal before me had not left school funds. It had been spent on other things. And so, and we didn't sell a lot of yearbooks and a lot of school pictures anyway, so it wasn't a lot to begin with. So I had to go to businesses and other places to gather money and PTO for to buy stuff for the staff. So when you go into the job, it's not a matter of just sitting back and getting staff input on where you want your money spent. It's doing it within all of these guidelines. Now, personally, I don't recommend that you spend a tremendous amount of time worrying about this until you get the job. Other than when you do discussion board 11, 12, and 13, and those of you who have done those, I can tell that you have done what it said. You've interviewed somebody or whatever. Those are the places where you build your foundation and you start your understanding. That plus this chapter that you read for week 13. That's the way you have a foundation. And then when you get in the job, the rest of it will start coming together. I was very fortunate that I had a principal that, as I was the curriculum coordinator, but he recognized that someday I would probably be a principal. And he would call me into his office and walk me through the budgeting process. And so he would tell me, this is my Title I money. This is how much I have. This is what the staff requested. This is how I'm going to spend it, and so forth. So the more you can be privy to that kind of conversation with administrators, and sometimes it's just a matter of finding the time and asking the questions and listening to their answer. That's the best way, in my opinion, to learn about budgeting, because it's not going to come to you all at once, but you'll have a better understanding of it, I think, after what we've talked about for week 13. And what are your questions? Comments, observations. Tell me what you did at Easter. Just talk to me.
I have a question, Dr. Whitaker.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so that book that you have,
Yes.
is that something you can pick up like at a office supply store, officer?
I'm going to try to show you something here. Do you see all of these?
Yes.
I went to survival school for beginning principals before the first week of the job, and they don't have that anymore, and it's a shame because it's a great course. But the tip I got there has stayed with me all the way through. The man said that instead of going to a million different meetings and keeping notes in different places, he used one book, and this is something you can pick up at any bookstore or at Target. It is a hardback journal, and it has lined paper on the inside. If you get the moleskin ones, they're expensive. That's what I use now that, you know, I'm retired. But when I was in school, I just used these, cloth bound. I have the dates on the outside. And I simply started on day one of the job. Like this one starts out with a new beginning. And I have right here all the list of the staff, of what I talked about. I have the interviews that I did with each one of them. That goes into the next section is when I met with the guidance counselor. Then I went to a budget meeting at central office. I have a list of all the budgeting concerns. Then I have a PLC representative meeting. Everything I went to, every workshop, every meeting, I wrote on the next page. Now that may drive some of you nuts that are very linear. That would drive you crazy. But I'm a real global random thinker. So my problem was that if I went to a workshop that was an EC workshop, but it was on autism, I may have filed that under EC. I may have filed that under autism. Maybe I filed it under workshop. I may have filed it under the name of the person or the date that I took it. So it was hard for me to keep up with things like that. But once I started this system, I just went straight through. So any workshop I went to, that went in the next page. And then when I got back, whatever happened then went in the next page. So when I was trying to remember what I did 2 years ago for the opening staff meeting, I could just look back to that journal and flip back to the beginning to that month of September or August and read my notes. To this day, the principal that took my job will still ask me, do you remember what you did for the PBS celebration? I can go back and tell you. I can look through my notes because it's organized by date. It's chronological. So that was my system. It works for me. It may not work for everybody, but it works for me. I do the same thing at Gardner Webb. Since I've been at Gardner Webb, I started at the very beginning with the journal, and I go through with all my different, whoever I'm working with, whatever class I'm having. So it's always in one place, and that's just been a great place for me, a great way for me to do it. Some people can keep all your budget information here and all your other information here. The beauty of this was when I went to a principal's meeting, I took this with me. And so if we were discussing something at a principal's meeting and somebody said, I think we talked about that at our last meeting last month, I can tell you right away because I can just flip back, you know, however many pages to a month ago, and I can tell you exactly what we talked about at the last principal's meeting, or who was there. So that's my system. It works for me. You're welcome to carry it on if you'd like to, or just experiment with it. Take the rest of the year and just experiment with it in your classroom as you go to teachers meetings and PTO meetings and IEP meetings. The only thing is, you have to remember, once you start doing that, it's confidential. So you can't just, you know, you have to keep up with it. You can't lose it because you have confidential information in it. So I have, I was looking through them today when I was pulling out, looking at budget stuff. I have all the conversations, the hard conversations that I had with people. And I had things in there like things that I used to say, like, explain to me why you thought that was a good idea. That's a good thing to ask a staff member who just did something really stupid. You know, explain to me why you think that's a good idea. Well, you thought it was a good idea. Or, you know, explain to me why you think you're a good fit for this staff and for the vision of this school. So it just kind of helps you to have it in whatever order. But for me, to be able to chronologically go back and say, ooh, I had this situation 2 years ago when I hired so-and-so, and we had that hard conversation. So I can go back and look and see how that turned out. So that's mine, JP, and that works for me. Anybody else? All right, well, you at least have to come back in and say good night to me, everybody. I'm gonna unmute everybody. So you can tell me bye. You sure you don't have any questions? I'm gonna tell Sarah, y'all are just so smart. You don't even need her.
We're recuperating from spring break.
You know
Absolutely.
like I said, I had 8 grandchildren, so I'm recuperating in 2 ways. I'm getting my head and my house back together, but I'm also a little depressed because I miss them.
Oh.
Anybody else? Well, I appreciate you coming tonight. If you have any questions, Dr. Whitaker and I are here to help you. I just can't stress to you enough that I think we all right now want to take that deep breath after spring break and just kind of relax a little bit, and you can't afford to do that. It's time to tighten up again because you're fast and furious on the next few weeks. And how your next 3 weeks goes is going to have a big impact on your summer because your summer is going to be intense. I mean, if you can imagine that if you get the Cap 1 done this semester, which you're supposed to, you will still have the same number of artifacts to do at the end that you did this semester, but you're going to do it in 10 weeks. And so you won't have a week off. So it's like, okay, well, you don't have 10 weeks of class, but you use that week, and so did I, to catch up. You're not going to have that. So once you start that summer session, now the good news is at the end of it, you're done. But it's going to be a big snowball rolling. Anybody else? And Katie, you be sure and get in touch with Dr. Whitaker about whatever your specific questions are. But on your situation, she'll have to know specifically which competencies you're talking about. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Well, good night, everybody. I enjoyed being with you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Z.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
Good night.